Chapter 1. The Calling in a Land Ravaged by War and Darkness. A young man named Elias lived with his father, a humble farmer who had taught him the ways of faith and perseverance. The land had been overtaken by a cruel king who ruled with an iron fist, demanding loyalty at the cost of one's soul. Elias, burning with the desire for adventure and wealth, chose to leave his home and join the king's army, despite his father's warnings. "Son, the world promises gold and glory, but only the Lord gives true riches." But Elias, blinded by ambition, walked away, leaving behind the simple life he once knew. Elias' journey to the capital was filled with awe and excitement. He had never seen such grand buildings and bustling streets. The king's army, known for its ruthless efficiency, welcomed him with open arms, recognizing the fire in his eyes. He trained relentlessly, pushing himself to the limits to prove his worth. In the beginning, his victories were small, defending villages from bandits, escorting nobles. But soon, he found himself leading battles against rebel forces and neighboring kingdoms. The thrill of war consumed him, and his name became known far and wide. He basked in the glory, unaware of the price his soul was paying. Chapter 2. The rise and fall. Elias proved to be a fierce warrior, quickly rising through the ranks. His victories on the battlefield earned him the favor of the king and riches beyond imagination. Lavish feasts, fine clothing, and a seat at the royal table became his new reality. Yet, despite the grandeur, something inside him felt hollow. He ignored the quiet whispers of doubt, choosing instead to drown them in the pleasures of his newfound status. However, the king was not a man of honor. He demanded absolute loyalty and saw every man as either an asset or a threat. Elias, in his pride, failed to see the dangers of his success. When a false rumor spread that Elias had ambitions to claim the throne, the king acted swiftly. Betrayed by those he called comrades, Elias was captured under the cover of night and falsely accused of treason. His wealth was stripped away, his reputation tarnished, and he was thrown into the darkest dungeon, abandoned by the very king he had served. Chapter 3. The wilderness. After years of suffering in the dungeon, Elias managed to escape during a prison revolt. The once mighty warrior was now a shadow of his former self, scarred, weakened, and without direction. He wandered into the wilderness, lost in both body and spirit. Hunger and thirst overtook him, and in his desperation he cried out, "God, if you are real, if you have not forsaken me, show me the way." At that moment, an old man appeared, offering him bread and water. The man, a wandering prophet, recognized the turmoil within Elias. "Return to your father, for he has never stopped waiting for you," he said. The words struck Elias like a bolt of lightning. Memories of his father's love and wisdom flooded his mind. Had he truly been so blind? With renewed determination, he set forth on the long journey home. Chapter 4. The return. The journey was grueling, but Elias pressed on. He feared what he would find. Would his father even recognize him? Would he welcome him back or turn him away? As he approached the village, his heart pounded in his chest. Then, in the distance, he saw a familiar figure running toward him. It was his father, arms wide open, tears streaming down his face. "My son, you were lost, but now you are found," he cried. Overwhelmed with emotion, Elias fell to his knees, realizing that despite all his mistakes, he was still loved. The entire village gathered as the father called for a feast in his honor. His father placed a ring on his finger and a robe over his shoulders, a sign that Elias was not just a returning traveler, but a restored son. The villagers whispered among themselves, some questioning how a man who had abandoned them could be celebrated. But his father silenced them, saying, "When one who was lost is found, we do not dwell on the past, but rejoice in redemption." Chapter 5. The redemption. Elias dedicated his life to righteousness. using his strength not for war, but to protect the weak and stand for justice. He sought out those who had suffered under the king's rule, helping them rebuild their lives. He taught them the very lessons he had once ignored, that power without wisdom is meaningless, and that the greatest treasure is not gold, but the love of a merciful God. One day, the king's army returned to the village, seeking to conscript men for battle. When they recognized Elias, they threatened to kill him. But Elias stood firm, unafraid. "I am no longer the man you once knew," he declared. "I serve a greater king now, one who reigns with justice and mercy." His words stirred something within the soldiers, some of whom chose to lay down their weapons rather than continue fighting for a tyrant. The village was spared that day, and Elias' story began to spread beyond his homeland. Epilogue, the legacy years later, as Elias sat among his children and grandchildren, he told them his story, not as a tale of shame, but as a testament to God's grace. No matter how far you wander, the Father's arms are always open. And with that, his legacy was sealed, not as a warrior of destruction, but as a prodigal son returned home. Message: the story of Elias mirrors the parable of the prodigal son. It teaches us that no matter how far we stray, God's love and grace are always waiting for us. True wealth is not found in riches or power, but in faith and redemption.